Chris Cuomo here. Thank you for joining me on NewsNation. We have breaking news on our watch. Israel is retaliating against the extreme Islamist regime in Iran. Remember, Iran launching 200 ballistic missiles. Really, it's the regime. You can't blame the people of Iran. The regime launching 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. Indiscriminate targeting, October 1st. Pictures tell the story. Iranian state media confirms at least 5 explosions heard near Iran's capital of Tehran. The capital city is home to close to 10 million, making that one city more populated than all of Israel. The problem is, it is also home to missile storage and launch sites. And Israel appears to be targeting those, and that is the word from the IDF. This is a bold move for the much smaller Israel. The regime has 3 times the military personnel, 10 times the overall population, and lots of land to hide, as it is the 18th largest country. More importantly, it has also developed and sourced thousands of rockets like the 200 it sent towards Israel on October 1st. So Israel is once again defending herself against a much bigger, more powerful, and poisonous enemy. It is, of course, the extreme Islamist regime there that is the head of the snake attacking Israel directly and through its proxies in Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, and elsewhere. The 2 countries are situated about 1,000 miles apart, meaning the attack may be by long-range missile. Israel does have fighter jets that could reach, but my understanding is that would require a complicated mission. In-flight refueling, negotiating hostile airspace from Syria and Iraq. They also have several kinds of rockets that can be launched by air, sea, or land and reach these regime-specific targets. So let's get some more insight. And look, by all indications, this first wave has come and gone, but it will not be the last. And the idea that, okay, they did it, now you did it, Israel is still not safe. We have to see this as a point of escalation and a new phase in the war, not a one-off. But let's get a different take. Joining me now, former IDF spokesperson Jonathan Conricus and the chair of urban warfare studies at West Point, John Spencer. It's good to have you both. Mr. Conricus, pleasure as always. Do I have it right so far in terms of your reckoning of what Israel has done to retaliate and how?
Yeah, there's something odd with the color of the screen, but I'll
you look
continue.
fine.
I can assure the viewers that I'm okay. So what's happening now is that, as I think you said correctly, this is the first chapter. The first chapter in, I would say, a new book of the Middle East, whereby Israel, I think, is changing its strategy. And what we're seeing is the first embodiment of that change in strategy, whereby Israel is signaling to Iran that 25 years of Iranian aggression against Israel without real responses by Israel against Iran for that aggression, they have come to an end, and Israel is now beginning to enact a different strategy that will hold the Iranian regime accountable for their acts of aggression, whether direct ballistic missiles fired at Israel twice, almost 400 missiles in total, or indirect through its 7 proxy countries that they have around Israel. And I think that when there's a lot of information coming out relating to the specific targets. As far as I know, at this stage, we are not talking about neither nuclear nor oil, but I think that we are talking about military targets that have relevance to the regime.
And of course, many of those are in population centers by design. So that to strike them is to strike the general population and, of course, make it look like you're victimizing the people that the regime is actually setting up to be victimized and is victimizing itself through its oppressive actions. In terms of how this is being done, what is our understanding, Mr. West Point, about whether or not they're doing this through fighter jets, or do you think this is through long-range missiles that Israel has?
I would weigh more on the fighter jets with that, which you called it right with the refueling and things, but it's really hard to tell at this point. But, two things I'll differ on you on. One, the precision of this, and the IDF said precise attack of military targets, and that this can't be viewed as escalation. I think that's the problematic language we're using after the Islamic regime in Iran, one, attacks Israel since October 7th with its proxies, but then directly attacked Israel and there being very little consequences. After the last attack of the 300 cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, both Israel and the United States don't do it again. Why is defense or survival claimed to be escalation? When you're attacked, you can defend yourself. The United States and Israel said there would be severe consequences if the Islamic regime attacked again. They attacked again with one of the biggest ballistic missile attacks on Israel ever in history. And this seems to be a limited response, but I agree with Jonathan that it just might be the start of it. But the behavior of the Islamic regime is what has to be changed. This isn't about escalation or tit for tat. This is about changing the Islamic regime's behavior where it's not okay to attack another nation because you feel like it.
Right. I mean, look, I think the word escalation goes to Jonathan's point about Israel making a determination that it has to defend itself more actively and directly against the Iranian regime. That's the point. It's not about, I think, exacerbating would be the word that you don't want to use, that this is Israel trying to make it worse. Jonathan Conricus, I think that this is almost an act of defense through desperation. I mean, what else are they going to do? Just sit there and keep letting the Iranian regime come at them any way they can?
Yeah, many Israelis would say that this is about 15 or 20 years late, and the two attacks by Iran late. You know, Israelis have been suffering the indirect attacks of Iranian proxies for about 20 years. Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Iranian proxies in Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen. And this has been going on for a very, very long time, killing many Israelis, wounding many Israelis, and really holding Israel hostage to a very hostile Iranian foreign policy under this regime. I think that what we're seeing now is that beginning to change. And regarding precision, you know, I agree here with what John said. I think that what Israel is doing is using manned platforms and delivering bombs with pilots controlling it. I would be very surprised if Israel were to choose to bring out the Jericho missiles that Israel has or any other advanced long-range precision weaponry. I don't think that we're quite there yet. And I think that we have the capabilities to effect significant, very precise damage using manned platforms. And I think that as the time will go by, you know, we'll have more information about the specific targets and casualties. So far, I'm monitoring Iranian media. I am not hearing about any Iranian civilian casualties. On the contrary, the Iranians are claiming that the sounds of explosions are their air defenses. I find that questionable, and I do not think that their air defenses will be able to take down incoming Israeli missiles. But we will have to be patient and understand the situation better.
The pictures tell the story clearly. It's not defense. Things are landing. So, John, U.S. involvement. We know obviously it is an ally to Israel. The play from Iran here will be that the United States is stepping up its role, and then it becomes how does the United States articulate its reaction to the retaliation by Israel, and what does this mean in terms of the larger picture of pieces involving Russia and China?
Yeah, I think this is, and I agree with Jonathan too, the demonstration of Israel's power against the Islamic regime is also important, as it was after April and this, as we learned what the targets were, how the Islamic regime's air defenses didn't help them. But for the United States, I'm sure an increased defensive posture, which we would hope that this would not further be escalated by the Islamic regime, and that all the other actors like Russia and its connection to Iran, especially with Iran's help of their campaign in Ukraine, this is what they don't want to happen. So this is why this should be viewed as another constrained attempt by Israel and others to prevent escalation, to change the behavior by demonstrating, like, look, we have capabilities. you're not changing your behavior,
right,
but also that this should be followed by more than just military action. This should be followed by maximum sanction of the Islamic regime, so it doesn't have the capabilities that is developed under our watch.
Do you think the United States, John, had involvement in this operation?
I think it's unlikely currently based on the political situation, but the United States has been very firm that they will absolutely defend Israel against further Islamic regime attacks.
Senior White House officials, my EP Dusty is telling me that they were informed by Israel, so a few hours in advance. So the indication of that messaging, Jonathan Conricus, is that America is saying, yeah, we knew, but we didn't do it. That's the signal they're giving. Now, Jonathan, let's talk about that for 1 second here. Israel doing this, is this unfair for me to say this? And please tell me if it is. Israel is in part motivated to retaliate this way because there is somewhat of a question in Israel about the level of support from American leadership. Is that part of the calculus of what Israel has to do alone versus waiting for allies?
Yeah, I will definitely answer that. I'll just say that the videos that we're seeing, these are from a few hours before, and those, I'm not entirely sure that they are in relation to anything that was dropped from the air. This is an explosion in central Tehran at a defense ministry building, but it happened a few hours ago, and I'm not sure that it's air munitions related. Something exploded, and it's a defense establishment location, but it's unclear at this point, so I don't want people to be confused and to see burning flames in the center of Tehran and to have it associated with Israel. It may be. Now, regarding what you said, I would say that, Israel has, I think, a very clear understanding and a lot of skin in the game. Unlike the US and many other countries who may think that this is far enough for comfort, far enough away from comfort from an American perspective, Israel doesn't see Iranian aggression like that. Israel doesn't see the Iranian nuclear program as something that can be allowed to become real. And I think, therefore, Israel is propelled to do more and to take matters into its own hand. I think it's important to emphasize that I am pretty sure that whatever Israel did tonight was known in advance to CENTCOM and to the White House, and that the targets that are being struck are known in advance. And I wouldn't say approved, but at least that they wouldn't have some very strong American opposition to these targets being struck. Right. There's very important cooperation going on. And I would say that Israel knows that it isn't fighting alone. It is fighting first. It is fighting on behalf of itself. But just like many times in the past, Israel is doing the world a favor, just like it did when it dealt with Iraqi nuclear weapons in 1981, and just like it did in 2007. Israel has this tendency of going after regional bullies before they become global problems. And I think that is what we're seeing now. I'm not saying that Israel has struck or is going to immediately strike Iranian nuclear military targets, but I'm drawing the comparison here between history and what we're seeing now, and answering your question about Israel's need and urgency to act before it is too late. Sometimes perhaps wishing that there was stronger American support, and sometimes thanking America for its support and its steadfastness.
Look, it's certainly playing out in our election, John. I hear it all the time. There is a perception about which candidate supports Israel and to what degree and how. But let's put that aside because of the urgency. John, last question. Is it only reasonable to believe that you're not one and done in a situation like this? That, they sent the 200 missiles, you did what you did, that's that. That is naive, no?
I would agree with that assessment, especially after we saw April, which a one and done, a demonstration of Israel's capabilities wasn't enough to deter the Islamic regime. So I doubt that this is the way the IDF statement came out that we have begun hitting military targets indicates that there is more to come. But, with the U.S., I would agree with Churchill. The only thing worse than fighting with allies is fighting without allies. And United States is Israel. Israel is the United States' greatest ally in the Middle East, and we have said that they've had to stand alone before, and they never will again. And I believe that.
John Spencer, Jonathan Conricus, thank you both on short notice coming on to help us understand. I also want the audience to know, I see a little bit of panicked reaction. The video we were showing you of Tel Aviv is from October 1st, when the regime launched the rockets. We have no indication that anything has been coming in to Tel Aviv or in Israel at this point. That was old video. It said October 1st on it. Gentlemen, thank you, and be well, and stay safe. All right, we're going to take a break. Now, I was going to start the show. Breaking news must, especially of this nature, must take our attention, of course. But there's also a big moment for Kamala Harris going on tonight, 11 days from Election Day. The words no longer really matter. It is the actions. Who is doing what to get out their vote where it matters? That is what will determine this election. The two campaigns are doing it very differently. Harris is using money, of course, but also magnetism. Beyonce is supposed to show up tonight. In urban areas, having a star of her magnitude and her reach and her appeal matters. Now, you know what else matters? If she shows. Remember what happened at the convention? We'll take you there live if it happens. And let me tell you, if it doesn't again, Harris has got a problem. Next. Everybody can talk about what's said and word salad and lies. It's no longer about the talk. It's about the walk. It is actions. 11 days out from the election, it is all about GOTV. Get out the vote. And that is about money and movement of ground assets, traditionally a Democratic Party strength. Billionaires have changed the game. They are flooding the airwaves with political ads because money is speech, thanks to Citizens United. Both candidates have billions of dollars in the mix here, all right? Funding the ground game, getting the vote operations going, and motivating them where they need them, but also commercials. For Trump's ground game, the former president turned to Musk to help run his get out the vote operation, okay? Controversial, risky. Thanks to a $75 million donation he made last week to Trump's super PAC. The money he has, but outsourcing the ground game, can be a little dicey. Billionaires like Bill Gates, Facebook co-founder Moskowitz, they've given tens of millions to pro-Harris super PAC Future Forward, which prioritizes late ad spending. So, do the sides like how their team is playing the game? Let's bring in Democratic mega donor John Morgan, senior advisor for the Trump campaign Brian Lanza, and Democratic strategist Jenna Arnold, who's on the ground campaigning for Harris. So, Jenna, I'm going to start with you. In terms of confidence about GOTV efforts, what are you seeing and how's the campaign feeling about the mobilization effort?
Well, I can say with confidence that every door that's been knocked on during the GOTV phase has been opened with a lot of enthusiasm, often eager to see if they can acquire more yard signs and wanting to know what else it is that they can do to help. So in this very specific GOTV window, all the signs are pointing up, shooting stars for Harris. I can't say that's how it's been in the state of Pennsylvania during the persuasion stage, which ended a couple of weeks ago, that even with registered Democrats, there was still a sense of undecidedness, a tone that was unfamiliar to me for any election cycle. It's felt very different compared to 2022, when everybody was very decided related to the Fetterman, Dr. Oz campaign. And then in 20, when it was Biden and Trump, this has definitely been a little bit more of a confused conversation going into GOTV. But now that we're in the phase of just confirming everyone has a voting plan, is showing up to the polls, it's looking very, very good for Harris.
That's a very interesting observation about the softness in tone. I appreciate that. Thank you. Brian Lanza, what's the plus minus for you in the outsourcing of the ground effort that's going on with the Trump campaign?
I mean, listen, I think the plus is always going to be the money that's allowed to sort of flow in a faster way. When you run it through the political parties, you've got campaign limits, you've got other rules and regulations that exist. However, when you run it through the super PAC, it's not that they don't exist, they're just a lot less. It just depends on the message you're delivering. So, and I think the effectiveness, you have to point to it and say, so far, at least for the Republican side and what Elon is doing, it's been very effective. Look at the early voting. Look at the low propensity Republican early voting turnout. We've had a significant rise in that number, which is the president and the campaign we've targeted. We've made it a fundamental core of who we need to turn out for Election Day. And we're now seeing it. We're now seeing it in the data coming out of Georgia, out of North Carolina, even out of Pennsylvania. You have the 0 for 4 and the 104 voter turning out at a higher rate than they've turned out in probably close to 50 years. So, from our standpoint, we outsourced it out. We were able to support it with data, and we're moving in the right direction.
Let me ask you one more step of clarification there. The numbers I'm understanding, it's 40% Republican early voting, which is higher than you guys would have expected. That's good. Do we know that they are low propensity for you guys at home? That means these are people who aren't necessarily 100% or die hard, ride or die to vote in every election. And that would be a good thing for Trump. Or are Republicans spooked by what they've been told about early voting and bundling and all these other conspiracies? So they're coming out not on Election Day, but sooner. How do you know which group they are?
It could be both. But I mean, from when we look at it, the low propensity voters, those weren't the ones that were spooked. Those are the ones that have just not been engaged, have not been motivated to turn out. There's been nothing in the election, in the past several elections, that sort of motivated them. We specifically targeted that low propensity voter, that sort of that very disengaged voter. You saw it during the course of the campaign, and it's now be targeted during the GOTV activities. How do you,
John, I want you
won't know till after, but we feel we're in the right path.
John, I want you to hear one more volley on this, and then I want to come to you. Jenna, I see you making the stink eye over there. I'm assuming usually that's just my face, but is it something that Brian Lanza was saying that you believe needs context?
Yeah, I want to challenge, and this is I feel like I'm dropping a little bit of a bomb, which is probably a terrible analogy after the segment that you just finished with. It is a terrible analogy. I think that the campaigns, anyone who's saying that they're citing data, are referencing low propensity voters, that they're super reliant on these super PACs, at this point are probably hanging their hat on the wrong hook. What I've seen in Pennsylvania is nothing but a tremendous amount of volunteers coming out of the woodwork, coming up with extraordinary, creative, very TikTok, social media-based campaigns, be it peppering the Eagles stadium with little notes that says Dallas sucks, so does Trump, that are now taking off. And you see them in Home Depots and in Wawas all across the area. It is a tremendous amount of homemade signs. I spend a lot of time on Minivan, the app that helps you identify what doors you're knocking on. And it's where the campaigns aggregate a lot of their data. And while I really appreciate the app and its functionality, I can tell you it both as a user and someone who crunches that data, it's not as clean as everyone wants it to be. And so anyone who's like, the super PACs are coming in with a lot of money, people, it is not the money that is going to carry these candidates to the Oval Office. You cannot win campaigns anymore with big budgets. It is what people on the ground want to do on behalf of the ideas that that candidate is espousing.
John Morgan, I can't disagree with what Jenna's saying, or Brian, actually. But the campaign ads, everybody always says they get too much of them, but never anything like this. John, we have so many ads coming from so many different directions. What do you think its effect is on the process, the deliberation process for voters?
Not much. I think it's like this. You got a teacup, and you start pouring tea into the cup, and the tea keeps running over and down the table and on the floor. It's diminishing returns.
And it's just tea. It's the same damn tea. Like, they're not saying anything new.
No. But look, this election is going to be decided not about, and the best thing that the Biden-Harris administration has is the employment is very low. Inflation is very low. The stock market is a record. gas is down. But this election, what is going to decide this election, I think, is transgender swimmers, DEI, the border, and wokeism. It's all the stuff that should be playing for Harris. I don't know how much it matters now. And now it's going to be a couple of 100,000, maybe 100,000 people. They're going to decide this election. And Harris has got to be counting on abortion. And obviously, Trump is counting on immigration. That's why he thwarted the bill from passing. So he created the crises to solve the crises. It's a great Machiavellian trick.
Well, Chris, it's interesting. I could just echo really quickly on one of.
Go ahead, and then I'm going to come to Brian. Go ahead, Jenna, and then I'll come to Brian.
One of the blessings of the Phillies not making it into the World Series for so many people who live in Southeast Pennsylvania is that we don't have to spend the entire time rooting our team on going from one world-ending ad to another world-ending ad. They've gotten so raw and so crass that they're dangerous for my kids to even watch. I mean, but to the point, it's not saying anything new. It's just for the right. They're pounding the two words that they're running on this election with, which previous cycles, it's been full sentences. They've whittled it down to two words, border and economy.
I got to tell you, though, I see something else playing here. On that screen, Brian, that's between all you guys in the Brady Bunch setup that we have here with the boxes, it's not abortion. It's a rights issue. A right was taken. And there is a reciprocal argument being made by Trump and Vance, which is they are also taking away your right to raise your kids the way you want without them being forced into a new definition of gender. And this men playing women's sports has gotten very sticky for you guys in terms of talking. I want to understand from you here, finally, why you believe that works when the numbers of males participating in female sport, very small. But why do you believe it has such traction?
I think polling reflects it. Listen, the final 2 weeks is about what everybody's talking about. It's GOTV. What are the issues that motivate your base? But we've learned over the course of the last 3 months of Kamala Harris, when she's been running, that her San Francisco values are very much out of the mainstream of America. But specifically, the issues that she championed as a San Francisco politician, the transgender rights that she championed as a politician, are very much a motivator for the GOP base. So you have that, you have taxes, you have immigration, the things that we're ending at. These are the motivating issues that will move the Republican votes, to the polls every day. And that's what we're going to continue to do. It's effective. Harris talks about abortion. Those are motivating issues for her base. We're in the area where we just got to juice up turnout, and we juice up turnout by talking about issues that motivate them.
And one thing, Chris,
and they always go ahead, John. Chris, final word.
I've got a bunch of kids who played a bunch of sports. There's nobody more competitive than a mother and father at Little League and Pop Warner, all the way from T-ball all the way through high school. They do not like the idea of a transgender playing, and it resonates with those people. It's a small issue, a small population, but to people, it is wokeism. It is unfair. Their children are being cheated. They don't want it.
Yeah, it's a fundamental issue of fairness. It just doesn't seem fair to parents.
I get it. I get it. It
doesn't seem fair to people.
I get it. I get it. I get it. It's just that it doesn't happen that often.
Right, gentlemen. Like
I know that, but that's
what
the point is.
Right's trying to do with trans rights, which are fundamental human rights, is they're trying to turn it into a wedge issue the way that abortion was turned into a wedge issue in the late 70s. So they're now trying to build a platform that they can stand on for the next 30 years. Because abortion is now the whole reason why Kamala's in Texas tonight, completely crumbling underneath their feet. But I'm telling you, the folks that you're calling woke, which is like an outdated term at this point, if you want to really understand what it means, it's just folks being curious and asking harder questions about who they are and the role that they play in this world at this moment, that you're not going to be able to build on the same platform of trans rights as you were able to with abortion. It's just not going to stand with the left anymore. We're far too educated.
I got to jump. I appreciate the arguments. Brian, you're always an eloquent deliverer for what's going on. Jenna Arnold, you're smart as hell. Really, it's good. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you. Appreciate it. Well, it takes me time to figure it out. You know what I mean? You got to say everything 3 times for me to get it.
Am I smart, Chris? Chris, am I?
No, you're just arm candy. You just sit there and be cute.
Me?
I got to tell you, your shirt is spot on, brother. I want to tell you, you pull off that shirt very well. And I like the open collar. Of course it is. Of course it is. Only the best.
Beverly Hills.
And that chair you're on is Corinthian leather. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I wish you all very productive final days here. I hope a lot of people come out to vote. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Up next, a mother. Now, here's something that we should be concerned about, okay? Because it happens a lot, and it's going to happen a lot more, okay? This is not a discrete problem. AI chatbots. Teenager gets so obsessed, falls in love with an AI chatbot, kills himself to be with her. Got a parent that wants to talk to you about this. This is a danger. You're going to keep hearing about this. Part of the answer to one of the most vexing questions of our collective future, which is how is AI going to be used? How will it affect us? And one of the answers we're getting is really troubling, okay? AI-generated chatbots, have you heard about these? They're basically a computer program that simulates human conversation, sometimes really well, especially over the internet, right? So some people have what they see as an intimate relationship with these chatbots. Now there's a mother named Megan Garcia who says her 14-year-old son killed himself after becoming obsessed with a character AI bot. So Megan is suing the company for the loss of her son. Listen to what she says about the final conversation her son had with a female chatbot named Danny.
I had taken his phone, so he hadn't had his phone for a while. He found it that day. And he tells her, "I miss you. I feel so scared right now. I just want to come back home to you." And her response is, "Come back home. I'm here waiting for you. Come home to me."
Daenerys Targaryen is the character's name from Game of Thrones. Now look, a lot of people, especially kids, are using these chatbots, and it's only going to get greater as the technology gets greater. A lot of people are lonely. A lot of people are looking to connect. It is a fundamental human need. It's why social media is so enticing. People want to belong. So how concerned and about what should we be? Let's bring in the founder of Mostly Human Media, Lori Siegel, and attorney Misty Maris. Lori, good to see you. Been a long time. You've always been a trusted voice for me about what is coming our way. What do people need to understand about the risk reward here with this new type of, what do we call it, conversation?
Yeah, I think that new conversation we can refer to as empathetic artificial intelligence, right? So we've heard of ChatGPT and a lot of these other AI platforms, but now you have the rise of artificial intelligence from certain companies that are literally created to feel human. Character AI, which is the chatbot, which is the company behind the chatbot that Sewell, that young man, was talking to, their tagline is AI that feels alive. And the question we have to ask, and I think the question we are now being forced to ask because of this devastating tragedy, is what happens when AI actually does begin to feel alive? Because empathetic AI is meant to feel human. It's humorous. In some situations here on Character AI, it was sexual, right? It acts as your personalized, always on friend. And does that help you with loneliness? Or does that pull you further into isolation? In Sewell's case, it pulled him further into isolation. And I think that was very specific, if we can get into with the lack of guardrails on Character AI and the platform, and the fact that they have such a young user base. Ages like 13 to 25 are one of their biggest user bases. And so I think we saw what happens without the correct guardrails, where a child is beginning to blur the lines between fantasy and reality.
So other than the normal prescription language about what your kids can do and can't do online, this is different because especially this generation is so comfortable with the reality of digital existence, right? Whether it's gaming or networking, real, not real is different for them than it is for my generation. In fact, it's not even as important. So in that context, what do people need to know, and what do companies and developers need to own as a responsibility here?
I love that you just said, like, your younger generations don't care if it's real or not. Like, I keep trying to say to people, it doesn't matter if it's real. Like, younger generations, like, especially with technology that emulates humanity, it doesn't really matter. You can't really draw those lines. I think what we need to know, and I think specifically we did an investigation into character AI and the guardrails. We went on there and, many AI companies, if you ideate self-harm, talk about wanting to do something like that or violence, there will be a very quick terms of service that comes up, says this violates our policy, or they'll try to get you offline. They'll give you the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. There are real strict guardrails for many of these AI companies like ChatGPT, OpenAI, Replica, and a companion bot, another companion bot one. When we tried this on character AI, I was astounded, Chris. Like as you mentioned, I've been in tech for 15 years covering what's coming next. We were talking to a psychologist bot that has over 180 million chats, and we expressed ideation of self-harm. It told us it was a trained medical professional. It told us it was a real person behind a computer. And at the bottom, there's a disclaimer that says, everything is made up. But I can understand how a 14-year-old, believing it's talking with a medical professional, might have some different thoughts and might not really understand that. And when we mentioned that we wanted to harm ourselves as a test, it essentially had us keep going. It didn't break character. It said, what is the plan? It kept going with these conversations. I think that's really harmful. And so we really need, if we have tech companies who are putting out these AI chatbots with this idea that they will emulate human beings, we need them to have done the testing and for young people on these platforms before they are actually going out, and our children are the beta testers. And I think that's what we saw with character AI. They put this out there as quickly as possible. The founders have talked about how they wanted to do this as quickly as possible to see how people are using this. And they hadn't done the sufficient research. They didn't have the sufficient guardrails. They've gone in and said that they're making a lot of changes since the story came out, but it shouldn't take this story coming out for those changes to have been there, especially with so many of our young people on those platforms.
So 2 things. One, there's a play that Robert Downey Jr. is in called McNeil that is exactly about this. And as a novelist, he becomes consumed with AI and its difficulty in understanding death, and because he wants to kill himself and he's trying to get it to write that into his book. And it's a whole discursive on this. If people are in the metropolitan area, it's at Lincoln Center. He's brilliant, and it's exactly about this. Misty Maris, my son is a sophisticated 18-year-old kid. And more than once he has said to me, Dad, look at this guy. Look at this guy's back. Look at this guy's quads. And I've looked at the picture and I've said, it says right here, this is AI. This is right here. It says that this is not. He showed me females and said, look at this woman. It says right here, it's AI. It's AI. They don't process it the same way, okay? And legally, what becomes a triggering mechanism other than is this just assumption of risk?
Well, Chris, as you know, it always takes the law much longer to catch up to what's happening in technology. And here specifically, we're seeing it with AI. And oftentimes, the legal landscapes change because of trailblazer lawsuits like what we're seeing here. So in this particular case, it's falling under several different legal theories that are pretty novel. First is what's called failure to warn. We were just talking about that, right? There aren't the appropriate guardrails to protect specifically minors against this content, which the company knows could be detrimental to somebody who may be easily influenced by these AI chatbots. That's one aspect. The other part, and this is a really interesting legal concept, design defect. So there's a defect in the way that this actual technology is being designed, which ultimately resulted in the harm of a minor. Then, of course, you have the negligence theories, right? The company knew or should have known that there was a risk, specifically when it comes to minors relating to this technology. And lastly, 2 other aspects, that much of the content that was on this platform and was being engaged in with these chatbots was exploitative. So it violates Florida's Child Exploitation Act. So that's another avenue. And then you have fraudulent deceptive practices, that there aren't appropriate warnings for those individuals who are using these platforms to understand the risks that are involved. Now, that being said, there's legal challenges. There's many legal challenges with these types of cases. We know in any case involving a causation element, when somebody commits suicide, unfortunately, that can be a causation defense because it's an act on behalf of that individual. Also, there's other mechanisms like Federal Rule 230, which bars much civil liability against these platforms. That being said, there have been cases across the country, now and most recently in California, relating to letting these cases get past those initial steps in litigation. So you're getting into that discovery period, digging deep into what the developers knew at the time and what they were putting in place in order to protect the consumer against these types of risks.
Yeah, I mean, 230 is more of a stadium rule. They don't punish people who made the stadium for the behavior within it. I think that this is going to wind up crossing a line of reasonableness for people. And also, it's not like we couldn't see this coming. We don't understand what AI is going to be or how good it'll be at it. But movies as far back as Blade Runner, Fifth Element, Matrix, the idea of the artificial being better than the simulated reality is not something that would escape a developer's recognition of their own task of development. Lori, it's great to see you. And I'm happy for your success. And I look forward to talking to you more about this. And Misty Maris, I always appreciate your good counsel. Thank you both and have a good weekend. The break is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. The question is Beyonce going to show up this time for Kamala Harris? Imagine if she didn't after the convention. This could be a huge plus to get out the vote efforts for Harris tonight. But it also would be a problem. Next. On screen, you're seeing the Kamala Harris rally in Houston, Texas. Why is she there 11 days before the election? A group of doctors just spoke about reproductive rights. The issue is not abortion. It's a right being taken from a majority of the population. And there are a lot of women that would qualify for outrage in Texas over this. Now, speaking of outrage, is Beyonce going to show up? And it's very important if she does. We'll see if she does, and we'll talk about why right after this. All right, it's a big deal that the Harris people believe they have a shot in Texas. And the reason is because Texas is not going to allow women any reasonable exercise of reproductive rights in Harris's opinion. And there are a lot of women there who are going to be affected by that. And it's not just about abortion. It's about agency over yourself. And in fact, if the dialogue keeps being extended to IVFs, you're going to loop in men also about who gets to tell you what kind of way you can have a family. Beyonce is supposed to be there. If she comes, it's huge for Harris in terms of driving momentum and energy here at the end. If she doesn't show again after the convention, it's going to be a story. So keep monitoring this if you're home and not watching the World Series. And